I am intrigued by the natural sciences. And when you combine them with a historical perspective, they give us insight into the past, present, and future. Right now, I'm on the prairie. And here you might see wild horses and American bison. But I'm not in Colorado or Wyoming. I'm in Florida. And this is the Florida Field Journal. Today, I'm at Paynes Prairie Preserve, a state park. Now I'm off to meet the assistant park manager for Paynes Prairie.
My name is Matt Bledsoe. I'm the assistant park manager here at Paynes Prairie Preserve State Park. Paynes Prairie is 23,000 acres. It's just south of Gainesville. And so we're kind of where that nature meets the city. And it's a beautiful time to be out here right now. The seasons have a huge effect on this park, more so than any other place that I've worked. And no matter if you've lived here for 30 years or you're just visiting, coming through, Paynes Prairie will always offer something new, whether it's looking at the bison, the horses, the sand-oak cranes, the birds, any other kind of wildlife, the alligators. We have some of the prime wildlife viewing on our trails here, especially the Lachua Trail, closer to Gainesville, is one of the best opportunities to view wildlife in this area. Paynes Prairie has been an important region in this area for many years. It was a cattle ranch essentially all the way up until when the state bought it. So it started with the Spanish. They brought the first cattle and horses here. The Spanish then left. The British came in. Then the Seminole Indians took over. When the Seminole Indians were pushed down from the Georgia and the Carolinas, ended up making their home here. They inherited the wild cattle and the horses that were in the area as their own, and all the way up until the Camp Ranch family is who the state of Florida purchased the property from in 1970. So really, from the 1600s to 1970, there have been cattle and horses on this piece of land called Paynes Prairie.
These rare cows are descendants of the first cattle brought to Florida by the Spanish explorers. Bulls are changed periodically to ensure genetic diversity and probably to raise the morale of the cows.
We currently have a herd of 54 bison, American bison out here, wild Spanish horses, and many other native species of wildlife. And bison, people are kind of confused about, well, I think of bison as out west, but we do have American bison here. They were here in the southeast, not in large numbers, but that's why we do have a representative herd of bison here as well. And the philosophy of the Florida Park Service as a whole is an ecosystem-based approach. It's not necessarily focused on one species to manage towards one species. It's if we manage the ecosystem properly, those species that would live in that ecosystem naturally will come back. One of the best management tools that we utilize here would be prescribed fire to help keep the prairie open, help keep the pine flatwoods and the uplands open, reduction of fuel for hazardous wildfires, and to promote that open sense under the pines to increase the blooming of certain wildflowers and increase the species of birds and deer in an area. They all come back after a burn. We can't rely on lightning, which was how Florida naturally burned, which the land needs in order to keep those certain species that we all love to see when we go to the parks. If we don't have fires, we won't see those certain species anymore. The bison that we have here, and people you hear buffalo, you hear bison, people say it's the same thing, right? Well, it's actually different. It's actually the American bison is what we currently have here. And it's not the great herds that you envision out west in the mass numbers of tens of thousands of plains bison. They were scattered throughout the southeast naturally, but never in those large numbers. And they're not actually buffaloes. A buffalo is a more of a hairless animal from Africa and has buffaloes, but the explorers here were familiar with buffaloes from Africa and other in Asia. So when they came here and saw an animal that looked similar to it, they called it a buffalo. Well, we happened to come upon a herd of bison and a herd of horses out here on the prairie. This is kind of rare because they have 6,000 acres out here, which they can share the space, but they've decided to meet together here and share this same land. One reason of that is that the water levels are higher now, and the space that we are on is slightly higher than the rest of the land around us. So it seems like they wanted to just get their feet dried off, and they're both sharing that same space to in harmony. There's no issues, but it's a great shot, and it's a kind of a rare occurrence to have both herds together like this.
Paynes Prairie is a water gauge for this part of Florida. At the north end of the park is a beautiful boardwalk. This is the start of the La Chula Trail in Paynes Prairie. The boardwalk gives a spectacular view of the famous sink. This water fills a hole that connects directly to the aquifer below. In 1871, the hole became clogged and water overflowed and filled the prairie. The result was a large lake that supported commercial steamboats. Then, in 1891, the hole opened again, and the entire lake drained in 2 weeks, leaving behind this sink. Florida communities are dependent on aquifers for fresh water. These water-bearing pathways channel through the porous limestone like underground rivers, and like above-ground rivers, sometimes they eat away at the banks. This results in unexpected sinkholes as water levels fluctuate. Water usage in Florida has increased 600% in the last 50 years. Approximately 10 miles southeast of Paynes Prairie is the Marjorie Kinnan Rawlings State Park. Rawlings is most famous as the author of the book The Yearling. The novel, set in rural Florida, was later made into an Oscar-nominated film. The park preserves the homestead in its 1930s historical setting. However, the well stopped producing water many years ago as the aquifer dropped. The complex impacts of water use for agriculture, industry, and the expanding human population, coupled with increasingly extreme climate cycles, all of these hold the future of this ecosystem in a delicate balance.